Everyone. Welcome to Hops and Highways. It's been a while since we've talked to you all. My name is Jess Lombardo. I am editor-in-chief of Asphalt Contractor Magazine. With me is Dormie Roberts, associate editor. And each week, normally during the year, we bring you a special report on the news of the asphalt industry. We've kind of been leaving you alone this summer because there isn't a lot of news on the infrastructure bill, but we wanted to bring you a special report this week because there's a lot happening in Washington. If you haven't joined us before, we talk about the beer we're drinking before we dive into the news. So Dormie, why don't you let us know what you are drinking today?
So today I have a light lager with an apple finish, super crisp, super crushable, not an IPA, Busch Light Apple. It's the season.
Is the season. It's not just Jess and Dormie that are back. Busch Apple is back too. So cheers, Dormie. It's good to be back with you talking about infrastructure news.
Cheers, Jess.
So as I mentioned, there is some real movement happening in Washington this week. In fact, as we drink our beers, senators are debating this historic infrastructure legislation, and we just wanted to give you an update on that. So back in June, this bipartisan group of 22 senators introduced a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package. This is significant because there has been very little bipartisan legislation happening anywhere in Washington right now.
And actually this week, the senators released the 2,702-page bill spearheaded by Senator Rob Portman and Senator Kristen Sinema. So this deal is substantially narrower than the multi-trillion-dollar plan envisioned by President Biden earlier this year, but legislation would authorize more than $500 billion in new spending to bolster the country's roads, bridges, and other physical infrastructure.
I saw a picture of the actual physical bill. It was like this big. It was crazy. I can't even imagine sifting through all of that legislation. But the bill, it does include $110 billion for our roads, bridges, and major transportation projects, with $40 billion coming from new funding for bridge repair, replacement, and rehabilitation. And that's the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway system, according to a White House fact sheet, which we will post for you in case you want to check that out. The bill, it also includes a total of $17.5 billion for major projects that are too large or complex for traditional funding programs, but they're going to still deliver significant economic benefits to their communities.
And also included in this bill, and this is important, it's the reauthorization of the Highway Trust Fund. So we've been talking about it for time and time again, but now it's coming up again. This bill features a $118 billion bailout of the Highway Trust Fund from the Treasury's General Fund, essentially an inevitable given lawmakers' inability to agree on a user fee reform or increases, but one that has largely gone under the radar and slipped into the bill text at the last minute.
Yeah, so the official name for this bill is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And if it's passed, as we said, it would dedicate $550 billion in new spending over 5 years on top of current FAST Act funding levels by incorporating $303.5 billion highway bill that was passed unanimously by the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works back in May. The package would also authorize the largest amount of funding for surface transportation programs. But transportation experts, they're saying that this funding is just a fraction of what is going to be needed to address this backlog of repairs that has been happening since funding hasn't been sustainable in the Highway Trust Fund. In fact, the American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that there's a $786 billion backlog for our roads and bridges alone. But we want to be positive, and this bill is a great first step in getting something done. So we will drink to that. Cheers, Dormie.
Cheers. And senators sure have been busy this week negotiating the legislative text. So there's been some speed bumps in the road, pun intended, as lawmakers are worried about how much the bill will add to the federal deficit. So they are also busy negotiating a slew of amendments, 281 to be exact. These are all needed to be settled before a vote can even take place. So far, 22 amendments had been resolved throughout the week.
Busy. But the big question behind this infrastructure legislation, which has been kind of the holdback of this whole thing since Biden announced his Build Back Better plan back in January, is how it's going to be paid for. So last week, lawmakers were touting $522 billion in pay-fors, and that includes $205 billion in repurposing existing COVID-19 relief funds. So since the pandemic began, Congress has provided about $4.7 trillion in emergency assistance in response to the pandemic, and that leftover money is now going to be used to help pay for this infrastructure bill.
And about $53 billion will come from unemployment insurance aid that the federal government was provided to supplement state unemployment insurance. So dozens of states are declining to take the federal supplement. So the plan will also draw about $49 billion by further delaying the Medicare rule, giving beneficiaries rebates that now go to insurers and middlemen called pharmacy benefit managers.
So other papers for this bill include raising an estimated $87 billion in spectrum auctions for 5G services, restarting a tax on chemical manufacturers that expired in 1995, which will raise about $13 billion. And also they're reselling oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which would add about $6 billion in funds.
Washington also wants to strengthen tax reform when it comes to cryptocurrencies, which will raise about $28 billion. They are also relying on projected economic growth from the investments to bring in about $56 billion.
So that cryptocurrency part of the legislation is actually what stalled the vote yesterday. The Biden administration, they're kind of pushing back against last-minute effort by the bipartisan senators to limit a proposal in the infrastructure bill that would increase federal regulation of these cryptocurrencies. And this fierce lobbying push helped stall plans to finish the voting bill last night. And now it appears the debate was going to stretch into the weekend. So they're going to keep continuing to talk about all the amendments that have been introduced. And once those amendments discussions are closed, then the bill will head for a vote, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday, but final passage of this bill could be delayed until Monday. So once it's passed, it's going to head back down to the House. And it's not determined if the House will make changes and send it back to the Senate, or, if it's going to have a brand new version once it gets to the Senate again.
And questions still remain about House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. How will she handle the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act after the Senate approves it? She's getting pressure from both moderates in the caucus to take up and pass the bipartisan bill immediately, while the Liberals wing is pushing her to wait until a reconciliation bill with $3.5 trillion in human infrastructure proposal can be considered.
So this was a huge part of Biden's economic agenda, and it's most likely going to need his help to get this physical infrastructure proposal across the finish line. They want to pass the softer infrastructure legislation that includes Medicare and home health care, things like that. That's going to be passed separately, but the House kind of wants them tied together. So Biden's really going to have to decide what this is going to look like for the next coming weeks and months. But real movement, we're going to keep tracking it, and cheers to that.
Cheers.
And cheers everyone who's watching. We've missed you all.
Thanks for joining. So it's clear that this bill is going to be huge for the industry. And on Wednesday, the White House released state fact sheets, like Jess mentioned, that highlight the nationwide impact on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So the fact sheet that highlights how the historic legislation will deliver for states and territories across the country to repair those roads, bridges, improve transportation options, and build a network of electric vehicle charging to accelerate the adoption of EVs and help connect every American to reliable broadband internet.
So the $550 billion legislation, it's going to touch Americans across the country with numerous industries and regions of the country scoring benefits from the bill. Very excited about it. California, for example, the most populous state in our country, they're going to get a minimum of $39 billion, including $25.3 billion just for highways and $4.2 billion for bridge replacements over the 5 years.
So we're going down to the South. Texas would get even more for highway projects at $26.9 billion, said the White House. So it would also get $537 million for bridge projects. California can also expect to receive $9.45 billion to improve public transportation, $348 million to expand its electrical vehicle charging network, and $100 million to help enlarge access to broadband internet.
So I was looking through all of these fact sheets and,
Wow.
I wish I had beer while I was doing it. But Wisconsin, where we live, they have 979 bridges and over 1,949 miles of highway in poor condition. That's a lot of our infrastructure that needs repair. And based on this formula funding that the White House is going off of, Wisconsin would receive $5.2 billion for federal aid highway apportion programs and $225 million for bridge replacement and repairs under this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act over 5 years.
Wisconsin can also compete for the $12.5 billion bridge investment program for economically significant bridges and nearly $16 billion of national funding in the bill dedicated for major projects that will deliver substantial economic benefits to the communities. So let's drink to that.
Cheers. So we know that was a lot to cover, but we wanted to try and break down this massive bill that's been talked about for 8 months now into kind of a way that you can understand like how the pieces are going to start affecting our industry and you as a contractor. Things are happening very, very quickly, obviously, with a vote maybe coming Sunday, maybe coming Monday, we're not sure. We're going to keep you updated on our website, forconstructionpros.com, and also the Asphalt Contractors Facebook page has all the news always posted as soon as it happens. In the meantime, we miss you all. We hope you're having a great summer, getting that work done, laying down the black gold, and staying safe out there. And make sure you stay tuned. Hops and Highways will return this fall for our weekly news broadcasts. And until then, guys and girls, have fun. See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Watch Hops and Highways live every Friday at 3 p.m. on Asphalt Contractors' Facebook page. Or catch the replay on forconstructionpros.com/videos.